Welcome back to the continuation of our tier list. Today we will be ranking all of the Scholomance Academy legendaries from the Year of the Phoenix. Okay, so first up is Ace Hunter Korean. Korean is one of the most overhyped legendaries I can remember in recent memory, because people thought he was going to be busted with his immune effect, because obviously immune is a nuts ability. In reality, Korean didn't really see much play, but I don't think you can call him bad, because an effect as good as the one Korean is stuck with, it's just so good to the point where you just cannot ignore it. Even cards like Death Speaker are decent. So I think Kreen is actually a decent legendary. He's nothing special, nothing like he was hyped up to be, but he can be craftable, not horrible. And next up is Archwitch Willow. Archwitch Willow started off as a 9 cost 7/7, then got bumped down to an 8 cost 5/5. This massively improved the card. The card is so much better now. It originally would have been like C tier, not that good of a legendary. But Willow can be dangerous in both standard and wild. Standard with the Dreadlords, and like, I don't know, if you must, you can summon Ticketus, which isn't optimal, but it still works. And then in wild, you can summon the Void Lords. My word, I always mess that up. The Void Lords. Yeah, that actually is pretty good. So Willow is much better than she was. I'd say she's still B tier. Disciplinarian Gandalin. Now this card is useless in Priest, easy D, but because it's a dual class is when they split classes, so two classes can use this card at once. Gandalin is only good in Warlock, but Gandalin relies on eggs to pop or small minions so he can summon his units. Problem with Gandalin is he's kind of awkward, doesn't have the biggest payoff ever. He's not as bad as he was in Scholomance, but I feel like with the introduction of new eggs and just new synergies, that Gandalin has gotten usable. I'd give him a C tier personally. Krasanov is another legendary with a powerful effect. He's better than Greenskin because he has a body you can trade in for one less attack, although he's not a pirate. Problem with Krasanov is Weapon Warrior is not really a thing. You'd rather run Rush Warrior or something. Weapon Rogue would love Krasanov. Some lists will, if you are exceptionally greedy. But the problem with Krasanov is he's expensive, and Rogue needs those cheap spells to just cycle and display as much as possible. So that's why I'm going to give Krasanov C. Forest Warden Omu has a very powerful effect that can be very scary to deal with. The problem with Forest Warden, though, is, well, for one, she is unusable in Wild because of all the other ridiculous combos like Malagos and Coon and Aviana and Survival of the Fittest. All that stuff that you can just spurg off with and just, it's crazy. But Omu in Standard is okay. You can summon the copy with Germination, give her taunt, refresh your mana again, get a good board. It's just, that stuff's excessive. You don't need her. She's like one of those legendaries that can help, but just nothing special. I'm going to give her C tier. Headmaster Kel'thuzad. Not much to say about this guy. It's a spell burst. One of those effects. One-time use. Can be good with like Shadow or Death. It's pretty good. Depends what you hit. Very situational. Not very consistent. You can play him with Cascade and Disaster and corrupt the Disaster, and that's insane. That's kind of the deck he belongs in, or some priest lists. I'd say he's B tier. Can be pretty powerful, but can be pretty bad sometimes. Oh, plus he has the Bigglesworth interaction, which is magnificent. Next is Abyss Alira. Abyss would have been S, but because she got nerfed recently, not even because of Libram Paladin, just because of Ramp Paladin, another issue. I'd say Abyss dropped a spot. She's still a good card. Just nowhere as nutty as she used to be. She can still pull out the Librams of Hope, which are just disgusting with the 0 cost first day of school or whatever. It's just, she's a good card. Infiltrator Lillian is another dirty little rogue stealth minion that you can't interact with. You never like to see this card on board because it's kind of like the Imprisoned Felmont and just randomly attacks. Lillian has pretty good stats. It's just kind of like a boring legendary. Not necessarily boring, but it doesn't really do anything crazy. Like, it doesn't have, like, you can't, like, abuse it as much as, like, Rast or Mizaki or Lucia or another card like that. So that's why I'd say she's probably in B. She's not bad by any means. It's just kind of expensive for Rogue. Not as nutty as a Van Cleave or something. Fireheart is a very powerful legendary for Shaman. It's exactly what I want in a control Shaman list. Helps you get out of sticky situations. This card does nothing wrong. Even at 3 cost 3/3, Discover a spell, it's not horrible. Discover 2 is crazy, and you can just chain and chain. Fireheart is an amazing card. I recommend a craft if you play Shaman. Very good card. Not quite S because you can still get those horrible, like, expensive spells from her. And it just sucks. Although, with the core set coming into play, it did gut some of the trash from Shaman out. Janice Barov. Now, Janice Barov at 5 mana was absolutely broken. Like, horribly broken. But now, recently, in the last week or so, they nerfed her to 6 because of the core set pools being changed and meaning that Janice would in turn get better minions to summon, which nobody wanted that because Janice was already crazy. So they nerfed her to 6. Still really good. I'm still going to put her in S though because you get way more value than what you pay for. And Rogue loves value. Go with Scabs, cheat out, shadow step it, shadow step it, shadow step it. You know what I mean. Janice is just still a really good card. Keymaster Alabaster is one of those cards that you might run in like a Control Priest or Control Warrior to get a little extra value and cheat it out. Maybe even Warlock. No plot twist now. He's okay. You can't really go wrong with him, but you can't really go right. He's one of those niche legendaries of the set that are just there. I'd say C. He's not horrible. Definitely not the worst of the set. S tier, Barov. Barov is a board clear for 3 mana usually. That's stupid. Also works with the new Rancor spell. You can even tempo him on 3 just to reset the board. Barov might just be the most absurd legendary of this set. It's just crazy. Lorekeeper Polkelt. Now Polkelt was definitely S tier at 4 mana. But now they just been nerfed to 5 mana. And the slower decks are kind of starting to fade a little bit more each and every expansion. He's still a good legendary. But now we have Talon that can just draw the thing you want for you. I'd say Polkelt's still usable, but the addition of Talon into the game, Polkelt isn't as useful. Still a good card though. Next, Mind Render. 2 cost 1/3. Mind Render got nerfed to 3 mana. It's great. Mind Render is one of the highest skill cards in the game. That if you don't know how to use Mind Render, she's D tier. She's just horrible. But if you are an insane player, like a GM player or like a tournament player or something, Alucia is one of the best legendaries in the game. Because if you know what you're doing and you know you can just disrupt your opponent's combos, get rid of Momozakis and Wild, get rid of Flame Wakers, Sorcerer's Apprentices. Hell, you can even steal like quests or coins or stuff. Alucia can dump your hand, just absolutely wreck you in the hands of a good player. For that, I'm giving her S tier. Still need to learn how to use Alucia, but she's still a good legendary. Mozaki can have insane burst and absolutely just roll your opponent. But she can be quite expensive without the proper setup or knowledge of how to play Mozaki Mage in both Wild and Standard. Not Standard anymore because I think they kind of gutted Sorcerer's Apprentice from the core set. But Mozaki is still a decent ledger. This depends if you play Flame Waker or not. Slate is a decent card. Slate has a really powerful effect. It's just in a class that does not really necessarily want to use that effect in that way. Because if you're playing a Spell Hunter, you probably play Windrunner and Malagos and just go face. You don't really want to trade. I mean, Bola Shot and Slate's pretty good. I'd say he's C tier. He's not horrible, but he's fine. Just one of those legendaries. Ras. Ras is a pretty easy A tier. Just Rune Dagger Ras. Board clear a lot of the time. He's just super consistent. An amazing legendary. You want him in Shaman and Mage. Rattlegore. Rattlegore is a weird legendary because he can get removed, but he just comes back and back and back. Just giving Warrior that late game, the Control Warrior, what it needs. Rattlegore is insane, and if they don't have like a Devolve Missiles or something, Rattlegore just takes over the game. Only reason Rattlegore isn't like S is because Devolve and Missiles, stuff like that, just return him to your hand, and he's just really, really slow. Apart from that, Ralgor is an insane control warrior legendary. Next is Shando. When looking at Shando at first, you might think of like Kel'thuzad. I kind of thought of that, but they're nowhere near Kel'thuzad. Transforming to copy beast is good. +1/+1 is okay. It's a fine legendary. Better than the C tier ones, but not as good as people expected. Militia. Soul Fragment decks have been extremely good, even without running the destroy cards. That just makes Militia more consistent. Insane body kind of reminds you of like, I don't remember what it reminds me of, but Militia is just really good. Just insane value. You can trade up. It's strictly better than the new Demon Hunter legendary Blackthorn, I think personally, because the Blackthorn doesn't have the good enough death rattles in standard, and in wild they're just not like abusive enough to like actually make a decent deck. Apart from a meme, I think Militia goes in S. One of the best legendaries in the set. Definitely the best Demon Hunter legendary, and definitely the best Warlock legendary. Next up is Speaker Gidra. I'd say Gidra goes in B just for the fact that you can kind of abuse it in like Wind Fury Shaman or something. Just buff Gidra up. But Gidra doesn't also get the playtime as some of the other Druid legendaries, especially in wild or stuff. She's just not bonkers enough. She's still good though. Next up is Sphere of Sapience. Sphere of Sapience is, I wanted a card like this forever. Sphere is a combo player's dream, especially in wild, because Sphere can draw out all your combo pieces that you need for the OTK. Although Sphere really sucks when playing against Turtle Mage back in Scholomance, but thankfully that deck is gone now because of the nerf of Turalyon Pilgrim. But Potion of Illusion still cards. You can still do the Nuts, Thins, and Rogue and Mage, but that doesn't matter. Potion is amazing. I love this card. It's A tier. Not quite S tier because it just basically draw. Not the best card in the world, but it's amazing. I love this card. Then it's Selena. Star Student Selena. Problem with Selena is it should be Battlecry, probably. But that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really change the card that much. Outcast is kind of a gimmicky mechanic. You can't really run much mid-range. Well, you can. It's just awkward. Plus, it doesn't really do something for you. It just disrupts your opponent's hand. I mean, the 4-cost spell that shuffled both players' hands or whatever it's called wasn't that good. Selena is okay. Problem with Selena is just doesn't really help you that much. It can disrupt, but that's about it. I'd say she's C tier. And now Turalyon. Turalyon is garbage. He is so bad. What will happen most of the time in Turalyon, 90% of the time, is you'll trade into a minion smaller than Turalyon, and you'll just feel sad about it. He sucks, do not craft. Not even dual penalty is not very good. Vectus is another bad legendary. Just too niche. You'd rather run like, I don't know, like any Terran. Terran's better. Just don't craft Vectus. He's just awkward. Death Row decks don't really work anymore. I tried him. Can't really get him to work. Sag. And that is my Scholomance Academy Legendary tier list. Next up is Madness at the Dark Moon Fair.